Good evening, Internet folks who are on behalf of Pyroclastic Records. We are beginning a approximately hour-long webinar on Facebook and possibly some other outlets, which we'll tell you if we find out, pertaining to a new recording that drops today on Pyroclastic Records, label run by the pianist-composer Chris Davis. It's the second recording by pianist-composer Cory Smythe for Pyroclastic, and it's called Accelerate Every Voice. We have with us Cory Smythe. The album is Cory on electronics and piano with 5 vocalists, and the 5 vocalists are 2 of the 5 vocalists are with us. One is Kyoko Kitamura on the lower right, if you're seeing the same screen that I'm seeing. Another one is Carrie Francis, who's on the lower left. She does vocal percussion. Also, Raquel Acevedo Klein, Michael Mayo, voice and whooper, and Stephen Richelek. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but maybe not. Richelek. Ursulak. Thank you. And we're going to have a fairly freewheeling discussion about various points that arise in listening to this record and absorbing it, and about Cory's own background. But first, let's hear the opening selection, which launches the recording. It's the first track on the date, and it's called Northern Cities. We'll hear the music, and then we'll enter a discussion about the particulars. Wow, Northern Lights. Cory, first of all, tell me about the, I'd like to know, before we talk to Kyoko Kitamura about her solo in the piece and her experience in singing it, your process in composing that and the 8 shorter selections that begin the album before the concluding 19-minute finale, which is much more ambient and wave-like and peaceful. I'm going to read to you what Kyoko wrote, I think on the Downtown Music Gallery site. I don't want to embarrass Kyoko, but it's complimentary. You wrote, Cory Smythe is undoubtedly the most exhilarating, astounding, and challenging pianist I have ever worked with. His talent knows no bounds. Don't blush, Cory, it's okay. When he asked me to be part of Accelerate Every Voice, I had no idea what I was in for. Microtones, odd meters, complex rhythms, shifting soundscapes through which I was asked to weave in and out of composed material and improvisation, all with a stellar cast of vocalists. What joy, even though it was the most difficult piece of music I had ever tackled. Now, this is coming from someone who's worked a fair amount with Anthony Braxton and other challenging composers. And so I just want that to stand as preface to my question for Cory. In creating this remarkable work, were you thinking of what comes first, the music or the voices? What's the relationship of the performers to the material that you're generating for them?
Well, first, Kyoko, that was really nice of you to write that, and those are all lies. But you guys all have to say nice things about this piece tonight, so it's uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, I knew going into this project what I wanted the ensemble to be, and kind of I had a sort of glimmer of this sound world that I hoped that I might be able to sort of coax into existence. And part of that sound world, I was thinking about, it would be interesting, I thought maybe, to see if I could get this kind of, surround the piano in this kind of, this texture of voices, working with the idioms kind of coming out of a cappella, but with harmonies that I know from spectral music, like the 70s, 80s French school of spectral music, and that I know also, I think actually probably, in spite of my being a new music guy, I think I was introduced to that by Steve Lehman's projects with his octet. So the next step for me was trying to kind of compile almost like a list of these sort of spectral harmonies and ways of mutating them, transforming them, expanding them, and compressing them. And I tried to do that in ways that where the sort of math that I was using to do this expansion and contraction was also math that I could use to generate some pretty simple ideas about rhythm, duration, and maybe some ratios that might generate some polyrhythmic stuff. And so this piece came about, I had this kind of like list of harmonies with durations kind of happening on my computer, and I started to just kind of play around with how to put them together. And Northern City's vowel shifts is the scaffolding, it comes from that work.
Did you know when did you know that you were going to start, that you were going to use 5 voices? And because you say in the booklet notes that one of your, it looks like the core inspiration for this recording is, or this is a refraction in some way of a recording by Andrew Hill called Lift Every Voice, Accelerate Every Voice, Lift Every Voice, which was a and the CD version comprises 2 different Andrew Hill sessions from 1969 and 1970 with smoking state-of-the-art jazz quintet and 2 separate choirs, one of, I think, 5 voices and one, I think, of 9 voices. And he integrates the vocals into the band in very fascinating ways. So in any event, you write explicitly that this sparked you, and another thing that sparked you was your notions of a cappella singing, and there's some mirroring, I think, or resonating of the Whiff and Puff song.
Right. Um, yeah. So with regard to the number of voices, I think uh, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, that was kind of like what I thought I could work with plus vocal percussion. So that's how I arrived at five. Um, uh, it'd be cool to have more, maybe some future iterations project. Uh, and yeah, I had to, I was kind of vaguely familiar with what's happening these days in a cappella music. Um, and so I felt like I had to kind of, research it, which to the extent that I did that, it was that research was very much guided by Cory, who was like herself a sort of historian of a cappella music. Um, and so when you kind of trace the sort of collegiate iteration of a cappella music back to its origins, you can, I think, make a case that the Whiffenpoofs are like the first college a cappella ensemble, the Yale Whiffenpoofs, and they have this eponymous song, and that song turns out to be kind of interesting. Um, and so I got into the possibility, Andrew Hill's music is kind of a transformation in some ways of this James Weldon Johnson text and song. The Whiffenpoof song is in a way a kind of transformation of this Rudyard Kipling poem, Gentlemen Rankers. I was interested, maybe there's a kind of parallel there that was, at least for
Bro,
me, productive. I don't know how much it ends up being audible in the end results here, but maybe in our next listening example, that one of the sort of in the refrain of the Whiffenpoof song, there's this line, "Pass and be forgotten with the rest." And the whole project for me kind of became this sort of meditation on my own problematic climate grief. And that line felt like it was resonant with this idea of passing and being forgotten.
Kyoko Kitamura, that track, Northern Cities, your solo is quite spectacular. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how Cory presents his intentions to you before you perform it, and just the experience of maneuvering within that extraordinary web of sound.
Well, that particular song was the first one I worked on. So when Cory gave me the scores, it was already in order, and that was the first one. And I was immediately struck by the preciseness of his vision, from very detailed syllables and very small, short duration dynamics. So it's already super complex and sophisticated, and then there was very, very precise direction on how to pronounce each syllable, what duration, dynamics, and then soloing. So it was, and then it was quarter tones. So it was like, it was beyond my imagination. And as a vocalist, I think to be challenged to create something that is beyond anything I can imagine is such a beautiful challenge. And it just completely pushed me out of the comfort zone. And I was just astounded that he could hear this. And I do have a question just listening to you. Is it okay if I pose a question?
Of course.
Okay. So Cory, you said this was spectral music with ratios and harmonies, right? Did you hear it first, or did you start hearing in the process of working with these ratios? Because that was my big question. I didn't know if you heard the music as it was, or if it came to you as you started constructing.
Yeah, I don't want to oversell my ears, especially my sort of inner ear when it comes to microtonal harmonies. I have been working on the last few projects trying to kind of make things with this sort of 24 note division of the octave, and I think I'm getting a little bit more intuitive about how to conceive of those things, but I'm really like working with the computer a lot to make this stuff, and I'm not like some evil genius who's able to clearly sort of envision all this stuff and then just spit it out onto a score.
Cory,
Sadly, I wish I were.
I've got a question for you about your controller. So tell us how your controller, I've been dying to ask you about this. Now I get to ask you on the webinar. So how does the controller work, and can you tell us a little bit about how you use it?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm playing a piano, a regular piano, and then I thought about trying to actually set this up so I could demonstrate it, but I didn't. I'm sorry. Or maybe I'm not sorry. Maybe nobody wants to hear this, but I've got this little MIDI keyboard sort of tucked in where I can easily access it. And that is playing a piano sample that I try to kind of adjust to make it sound as much like the piano that I'm on as possible. And it's outputting to this speaker that sits on the soundboard. And it's sometimes I call it a transducer speaker or a vibration speaker. You wouldn't really hear any sound out of it if you're just holding it in your hand. But when it is on a resonant surface, it vibrates that surface. And that's the thing that makes the sound. And that's how the piano works too. It's vibrating this piece of wood. And so the speaker ends up vibrating the same piece of wood. The sounds all sort of live together in the same piece of furniture. And the hope is that they end up kind of unifying into one sort of plausible one plausible piano that happens to have all these extra notes.
So how often is it that you have like one hand on each, or do you switch both hands, back and forth on the keyboards?
I guess I end up just logistically, this keyboard usually sits to the right, and I'm usually getting it with my right hand and playing. If I'm using it, I'm usually playing with my right hand, and my left hand is playing the actual piano keyboard. And I can show you the score sometime, Chris. I mean, it's like, so all the sort of quarter tone stuff, I just, to simplify my life, notate on a separate set of staves. And so you can see from that, like how much of the written material involves me actually playing both keyboards. And then when I'm improvising, I'm trying to find ways to fluidly move like across this whole sort of meta instrument.
Very cool. Well, a lot of pianists are trying to incorporate your idea, and I was talking
They
to
are.
Craig.
They're ripping me off.
Yeah, I was. Craig came over a couple weeks ago and like brought it, and he was like, "Oh, this was Cory's idea," but I've seen a few people do it, and I'm like, that's Cory's idea. So.
Oh, that's actually, I've been wondering if it was Craig's idea, because we did kind of the genesis of doing this was on a project with him, and looking back, I'm not totally sure who came up with it. So
well, he says it was you. So.
Okay, all right. I'll take it.
Just for listeners who don't know who Craig is, that's probably Craig Taborn. So,
right. Yeah,
the
exactly.
Great Craig Taborn, yeah.
Quick question, maybe a stupid one, so forgive me if it is. Was this all recorded in real time? Is the recording a real-time document, or is there a lot of post-production on it?
Yeah, no, I may have tweaked some things. Yeah, okay, I'll level with everybody. So
sorry.
No, it's fine. I've already talked about this. Yeah, I think that when I was looking into this kind of sound world of modern a cappella music, it's so glossy and amazing, these recordings. And I'm going to blame you, Carrie. I think you told me like a lot of that stuff ends up being the result of people layering their tracks on top of one another and recording separately.
So. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so once I knew that, because I was writing this hard music, it's got all these like very precisely tuned harmonies where people are supposed to sing in intervals that they're not, probably that familiar with these quarter tones and everything. if only for that reason. I felt bad presenting this to people and kind of putting everybody through this kind of ringer, like we really have to be able to nail this. And so from an early point, it became like, okay, now I'm going to try to record this the way that these other recordings happen. We'll put people in a booth, they'll record their parts separately. I'll have all this information at the end, and I'll just take hundreds of hours to put it together, drive my wife crazy. And she's over here laughing at me because yeah, there were many times she would come home from work and I would just be like in a dark room, like I'd forgotten to turn on the lights all day and just like hunched over a computer and look up like, so I don't know why I'm telling everybody this, but our joke was I became her mole husband. So I was like a startled mole anyway, next question, Ted, sorry.
Well, there is a follow-up to that, which is when it comes to performing this music, in a live situation, what are is that a complex proposition? I mean, it seems my impression, again, not as a musician, as someone who listens to music, is that music that's considered very difficult and unplayable within a generation or two becomes part of common parlance for students who absorb it. So I'm just interested in I guess that that practical aspect of performing this score.
Everybody on this project is totally capable of making this happen live. It'd be a different kind of sounding thing that happened. It'd be looser in some ways. I think it could probably be potentially more beautiful or interesting in some other way. And we haven't gotten to try that yet. Any plans to have maybe done that around this time have obviously been put on hold, but yeah, hopefully there'll be a point where we can test that hypothesis, and maybe whoever's out there right now will see you then. Okay,
why don't we take this opportunity then to play the second track on the record, which is the title track, as they say, Accelerate Every Voice. And then you wanted to go 20 seconds into the next piece, I think.
I don't know if we have to do that, but
we don't have to, okay.
If anybody has, for some reason,
that might be beyond my technical ability
yeah, okay.
at this moment.
Well, we were talking about the connections.
You'll have to get the record. It's called Accelerate
okay.
Every Voice, and it drops today on Pyroclastic.
Dum sim, no ma fido fido la ba un hato no na nya ya house la vie le power fido fido la ba un so mi nya wa hello be someday no I am in some more be lovely life some love we le power fido hello, it's a big love with
Wow. Yeah, that's what I would say too. That's the Accelerate Every Voice, which titles Cory Smythe's fourth recording as a leader, right, Cory? This is your fourth recording under your name, and it drops today. It's released today on Pyroclastic Records, the label run by Chris Davis, who you see on your in the upper left of your screen. Carrie Francis, who's on the lower right, was that slamming percussionist who you heard, and she was doing it with her voice, not with the drum set. Kyoko Kitamura was one of the vocalists. The other vocalists were Raquel Acevedo-Klein, Michael Mayo, and Stephen, I'm not going to pronounce the name correctly. Again, my apologies. Urchulak, I think.
Reiselak.
Reiselak, thank you. Sorry.
I had to email him actually to make sure I knew how to say it too. So.
Thank you. Next time, I'll be sure to do it properly. I should have practiced a little more. Carrie, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. Well, first of all, Cory cites you as almost a gestational collaborator in this, and talking about a cappella music and possibilities and so forth and so on. Can you talk about your experience in working with him on setting up the project?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course. Cory, I think, is so generous and kind with that. I think, honestly, it was just these awesome conversations about a cappella, and he was really, I'd say, generous with his time, letting me just kind of talk about a cappella, which is what I tend to do. So thank you for being such a good listening board, Cory, and actually turning it into something really generative and wonderful. Yeah. I think, like Kyoko might have mentioned, seeing the score for the first time was so interesting, because there is this kind of performance practice, especially at the collegiate level, for what a contemporary a cappella group usually is and how they usually operate, and the fact that they usually cover top 40 pop songs and are generally operating within styles adjacent to that, if not directly in it. And for us to talk about that, and then to see the score on day one, and see something that was so intricate and complex, and drawing on all these different soundscapes, and marrying a lot of different things that to me seemed so far away from what I thought I had described. And yet, the more we dug into it, the more I could see these really finely refined details that were referencing just myriad ideas that have been present not just in a cappella in the last like 25 years or so, which is kind of when it's begun to pick up steam, and be popularized through Pitch Perfect and the show called The Sing Off and Sing It On and a couple other kind of American Idol, America's Got Talent style shows. But really the last 100 years. So looking back to the Whiffenpoofs, who are sort of anecdotally pointed to as the first collegiate a cappella group. But historically speaking, it seems like they really came at the right time. They hit right as the golden age of barbershop was hitting in the 1910s, right? If you think of The Music Man, that's the era it's depicting there. And this other tradition of glee clubs that had been inherited from Victorian England and these German manor corps, these sort of community choruses that were also these social clubs. And so the time was just perfect for kind of a mid-sized group. And in fact, that first group of Whiffenpoofs who broke off from the Yale Glee Club was indeed 5 members. So whether that was coincidental or not with regard to this project, it was indeed 5. And that eventually blossomed to about 12 to 14. I think 14 is now their number, which is about the standard size of a collegiate a cappella group. Yeah.
Well, it's a long, winding road from the beginning of the 20th century to this work, to the pieces that we hear on Accelerate Every Voice. And one thing that I note about, we have a note that most early New Orleans jazz musicians sang in vocal groups, including Louis Armstrong. Actually, I was thinking that too. He sang early on in barbershop quartets, which probably had a lot to do with his singing, but I digress. Code switching is part of what you do, Cory. It's part of what you do, I guess, Carrie. I mean, I was looking you up on YouTube, and there's an arrangement of an Irving Berlin song for an enormous, for an enormous choir. Something Chris does, and I guess it's something Kyoko does too. And by code switching, I mean moving in and out of styles or genres, or maybe forms of musical expression that require different ways of thinking. So where am I going with this? I'm going with a little bit with Cory's musical background and career. You have a whole audience, for example, Cory, that knows you as the accompanist for Hilary Hahn, the Grammy-winning violinist. And you've been on 2 records with her, and you're playing a canon that stretches from Mozart and Schubert to commissioned pieces by contemporary composers in all areas. You have 2 solo piano records, but the 2 records that you've done on Chris's label, Pyroclastic, have involved voices and kind of deconstructing Americana in a certain way. So I don't know if this is a question at all. I'm feeling a little rambling, but can you just take that and run with it a little bit? The panoply of styles and vocabularies that go into what you do. That maybe even applies here in refracting the Andrew Hill recording into the sounds that we're hearing on this recording and this score.
Yeah, I think there are a few ways to potentially think about struggling to answer that question. That's not your fault. That's my. But I think one thing I've been trying to investigate is, I don't know, starting with Circulate Susanna, which we're not talking about, but like that music is, I think especially me trying to conjure as many sort of weird alien kinds of shapes as I can. And I've partly just been thinking about what happens with that music when it becomes sort of divorced from this rhetoric that we have some sense of understanding or sort of shared understanding about. It has sort of linguistic properties. If I'm sort of moving away from that, is it possible to imbue these kinds of projects with meaning that comes from the sort of intertextual relationship of source materials? And so, yeah, I think that something like that was what I was attempting in in both of these projects that I've gotten to gratefully do for Chris's label.
Chris, I'd like to ask you and Cory, you seem to have, certain affinities in your aesthetics. Certainly, you work with a number of the same people. Cory has 2 records with in a trio with Ingrid Laubrock and Stefan Crump, saxophonist and bassist. You've worked with them. Cory has recorded, I think, on 5 different occasions, Tyshawn Sori's music, and as part of his trio. Chris has worked, a fair amount with Tyshawn as well. And you're the proprietor of this label, and I think this might be how many releases are there now? Is this something like the 20th release on Pyroclastic?
Oh, we're not quite there yet.
We're not quite there.
This is the 8th, and
it's only the 8th.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
We have a couple more.
You'll have a couple more to go. But what makes Cory? What makes Cory a good fit for the label? And maybe also talk a little bit about your sense of Cory's overall musicianship and your sense of his musicality and pianism.
Yeah. Well, when I started the label a couple of years ago, I put out a few of my records and, built the label hoping that I would be able to invite other artists to come and record, and set up the nonprofit last year. And really the mission of the label is to support non-commercial adventurous artists in their endeavors. So that's Cory. I want to give the artist musicians space to try things, to just feel uninhibited by any kind of commercial pressure. So that's really, the direction the label's heading in. And I've known Cory for 12 years, I don't know, 15 years maybe. And the first time I heard Cory, at least on record, was his solo record, Autotrophs, which is just an incredible solo record. If you haven't heard it, please check it out. I think we've kind of been following each other around on the scene, playing with similar people, and but always such a mutual respect and love for each other's music, and adventurous spirit. And I'm just so honored to have Cory on the label, and that he wanted to put his music out with Pyroclastic. So thanks, Cory.
Is there I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but the 2 recordings for Pyroclastic are ensemble records with voices. The other 2 recordings are solo piano records. Is there some reason that you're choosing this outlet to present that music?
I don't know. Not that I'm consciously aware of now.
All right. Fine. Chris, when Chris and I were emailing each other, I think before I got in touch with you, Chris, you asked me to talk to Cory about his working relationship with Hilary Hahn and also your association with Tyshawn Sori. I'm not sure. Would you like to flesh that out, Chris?
Yeah, I was just throwing out some ideas, but I really don't know, how you started working with Hilary or Tyshawn, and maybe you could just talk a little bit about your relationship with both of them, and how you started working together, what it's like for you to play in such different contexts.
Yeah. Well, Hilary and I worked together from something like 2011 or 2012 through 2017, maybe. That started with just this kind of, she just like needed a last minute pianist to play some, to play some Ives sonatas at the Stone. And it was the same week that I was supposed to, that I did play that Braxton piece, which, Kyoko, what was it, number 31, 30?
No, it was 30. It was
30,
you did
okay.
the complete 30 at Roulette, right?
And I think I had a couple other gigs already that week. I was like really already so stressed out. really especially worried about this like hour-long, hundreds of pages of Braxton music that I wasn't sure what to do with. And then I got off the train one day, like already having a kind of like anxiety attack, and I had a voicemail waiting from a person claiming to be Hilary Hahn who needed me to join her and playing these Ives sonatas, which I'd also never played before. Or I played like one or two of them maybe, but I needed to learn two more. And yeah, so that was the origin of that gig. And it became, I mean, I feel like I learned so much about dealing with the piano on that gig, and the opportunity to play with her. You know, she's working at such an extraordinary level of musicianship and interpretive imagination, but also just the kind of luxury of that gig to like go night after night to these like amazing instruments and play the same repertoire over and over again, which almost never had happened in my life up until that point. So you could really just kind of, at some point, you're beyond worrying about like how this music sort of fits together, and you're really in the sort of micro details of like, I've never quite played this phrase the way that I'd like to, and how does that work on this piano, and how does this work? And yeah, so I feel like those were really a set of formative experiences for me. And Tyshawn, I met him very early on when I moved to New York. He was one of the, he was already a towering kind of figure in my kind of cosmology of who is who making music. This is like 2004. I don't know, I've been here a while. And I actually went to a gig with him and Steve Lehman, a duo concert that just sort of completely blew me away. I mean, blew me away for some of the reasons that I was expecting, knowing what those two musicians did on records that I was aware of. And in some ways that I was totally not expecting, because they were sort of departing from language that I knew. And one of those departures was that Tyshawn played piano on that gig. And it was just like the most crazy, amazing piano playing I've ever heard. And I asked him afterwards if I think I would have been too shy actually to introduce myself, but I had a kind of like which was to ask him if I could just get a piano lesson with him. And I think he sort of demurred or something, but he said like, well, we could get together and have a session or something instead. So we met up and found out that we had all these sort of musical loves in common. And before I knew it, I was playing in a group with him that ended up recording an early record of his called That Not. And we continued to work together a little bit over the years, and some ICE projects where he came in as a commissioned composer. And then his trio kind of coalesced. And I mean, that set of experiences, I don't even know where to begin talking about what what those have meant to me and what I think I owe in terms of whatever musical understanding I have to being in that group and working with those guys and working with Tyshawn. And yeah.
Cory, can you, I just want to extend on this reminiscing a little bit and step back to before you got to New York and talk a little bit about your path as your formative years as a pianist and in building up to the move to New York City. You're originally from the Midwest?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to school for classical piano at Indiana University, and then I got a master's in classical piano at University of Southern California. And I came back to IU for some nebulous postgraduate fiddling around, also in classical piano. And at some point, it was like, oh, getting old out here in school, and I'm not exactly sure what to do, but I will maybe just throw myself at the scene in New York and hope for the best. And
what scene were you looking to throw yourself at in New York? You're majoring in classical piano in all these places, but obviously other things are going on as well.
yeah, I mean, I remember having the thought, you know, when I was in Bloomington in those final years, I was doing a fair amount of collaborative work with violinists and other instrumentalists, some singers, playing some recitals. I was in a kind of various ensembles with this amazing trumpet player, improviser, composer named Kyle Quast, who's still in Bloomington. People should check out his work. And right before I moved to New York, I'd done some new music, mostly in LA. I kind of wasn't really so involved in it in Bloomington, but I sort of backed into an early gig with ICE right before I moved with the International Contemporary Ensemble, right before I moved to New York. And so I don't know, I kind of had these things going on, and I thought, well, okay, maybe I can do all this same stuff in New York, working with some instrumentalists, improvising, and some new music, and maybe it'll just kind of lead somewhere. And I also, maybe I should say too, that I was a huge Greg Osby fan. I mean, I remain a huge Greg Osby fan. And I had worked a little bit with him and done some sessions with him, and I sort of like harbored this not so secret ambition that maybe I would end up getting to play with him if I moved out here too, which happened for a couple nights.
Oh,
yeah, I didn't ultimately get that gig, but I had a couple of really meaningful experiences for me.
Stride piano. See, both of your solo piano records have at least one track that referenced the stride piano tradition. Was that important for you in your development?
Yeah, and I think that actually owes something to that sort of moment where not only was I getting to get together with Greg, but I had some really important moments getting to hang out with Jason Moran, who remains like one of my all-time favorite pianists and heroes, and learning about kind of what he was interested in and what he thought was a kind of lineage that I needed to check out, and that included a lot of stride pianists, and so I have a genuine interest there, but it's also I think me being pretty derivative of I don't know, these moments with Jason that impressed me.
Kyoko Kitamura, Carrie Francis, would either of you care to chime in and ask Cory questions? I'd like this to stay as open-ended as possible. And I seem to be monopolizing the questioning now. Kyoko, Carrie, Chris?
Well,
Kyoko.
yeah, sure. So going back to the recording, again, I was really impressed with the preciseness of the vision and also the syllables that you came up with. And so I wanted to know how you came up with these super duper precise vocal actions. I wouldn't even call them syllables because it's all mixed in with exhaling, you know, rapid crescendos and decrescendos and going up and slides, and it was all notated. So I was very curious about how you came about that.
That's kind of you. I think I was trying to evoke sort of, for a lot of that stuff, it's about these kind of like transformation of vowel sounds. And I wanted to kind of lean into this capacity for voices to seem like electronics in a way, or to evoke sort of synthesizers and these sort of wavetable synths where sound kind of morphs over the course of things. And yeah, I spent a lot of time here in this room making weird noises with my own not trained voice and trying to figure out what things could happen. And there was, you know, some amount of study or attempt to study. I mean, all this stuff happens actually at a really high level, as Cory can attest, in contemporary a cappella music. There's like an enormous amount of sonic invention and creativity about how people use their voices to sort of, especially to kind of imitate instruments and, you know, realize all the parts of these sort of top 40 recordings that they're recreating vocally. So a lot of that was also just my attempt to try to access that sort of world of vocal understanding.
I just want to mention that all the vocalists that I met on the recordings, astounding. I learned so much from them. And Michael Mayo was the sort of the improvising partner to me. So we were both improvising. And I think towards the end, we had rehearsals and then 2 days of recordings. And towards the end, I think we changed. I think we were picking things up from each other so that we changed. And a question for Cory. I learned so much from you in terms of vocal improvisation and enunciation. What were some of your challenges compared to more conventional, I don't know if I should say conventional, but from some of the other Western a cappella traditions? How would this be different, and what were some of your challenges?
Definitely. First off, thank you. That's so kind. Oh my gosh. I'm just so happy to have been in the room watching you and Michael and Steve and Cory work, because it was just bonkers going into the studio and seeing you guys. So no, thank you for letting me be there. Speaking from a contemporary vocal group, which could be anywhere from maybe 4 or 5 people to maybe as big as like 12 to 14, usually the beatboxer or the vocal percussionist, kind of whatever terminology they choose to use, usually improvises their own part. And if it's a cover song, like a top 40 song, then usually their part's relatively clear cut. But if the arrangement is taking it in a different stylistic direction, then usually they consult with the arranger. But it's rarely dictated, especially not to the level of precise detail that Cory did with this. So it was very interesting, and Cory and I actually got to chat a little bit about assigning particular sounds. I think we had a sense, correct me if I'm wrong, Cory, of sort of high to low. Like we had a spectrum sort of laid out, but maybe not necessarily everything was assigned. So there was still some flexibility for me to find certain patterns that would let me get in and out of particular tuplets, or just rhythmic patterns that would have been difficult if I were using a different set of sounds. So certain transitions were luckily still kind of within my control to use my particular palette, that if that had all been dictated, that might have been a little more difficult for me to emulate what, say, maybe a different beatboxer might have done. So it's a small little bit of it. Hopefully that begins to answer the question. Thanks, Kyoko.
Wow, yeah.
I was asking Chris before about some of the affinities that make Cory a good fit for the label. And one thing that is that both of you are devotees of using prepared piano in the improvised space and manipulating sound and doing, you know, wild and weird things with the piano in an absolutely fearless way. Can you talk a little bit of, both of you talk a little bit about, I don't know, talk shop a little bit? I'm not sure how to ask the question. I'm not a piano player, but it was particularly apparent to me watching a couple of YouTube clips of you playing at the Cordelia Street Cafe with Stephen Crump and Ingrid Laubrock, and, you know, watching what you were doing in real time. It was it wouldn't have been evident to me necessarily just from the from listening to the CDs that you've done with them. So just go at it for a little bit with prepared piano stuff.
Well, I've been using prepared piano techniques for maybe 15 years now. I went to France to study with the great pianist Benoit Delbecq, and who's an incredible pianist if you don't know his music, and a very unique, creative way of using prepared piano. So that was really my introduction into preparing the piano and the sounds that were possible, and conceptually, how he approached it, and what I wanted to take, things that I wanted to take from that, and things I wanted to find for myself. And part of that was just finding materials that I thought would work. So I didn't want to steal anybody's material, so I started messing around, just cutting up erasers and finding things that worked for me. And I really use prepared piano now as a sort of a found sound. So it's hard for me to go in and out of the piano. I think Cory's really good at it, but for me, it's still like, doesn't feel as fluid. So I often will put things in the back of the piano and then sort of figure out, well, okay, well, where did I end up? Where, what do I have here? And it's almost kind of like a found sound. And then I'm going to improvise with that, whatever it is. So that's kind of where I've landed with the piano preparation. What about for you, Cory?
Yeah, I guess I probably don't. I mean, you're actually super fluid about preparing and unpreparing the piano, which is an amazing thing.
Really, I don't feel like
well,
that.
You've got like
you.
you're yeah. I don't know. I've tried. I guess when you start to enter this world with musicians like, let's say, Akyung Lee, who's like this. Hopefully, everybody's checked her out, but her improvisations on the cello do this amazing thing where ideas kind of start in one sonic terrain and they morph kind of gradually into some other place, and they can kind of come back. And I guess my issue with the piano is like, it's so hard to figure out how to do that kind of thing. And I think most of what I'm trying to evolve with getting inside the piano and adding extra keyboards and talk boxes and stuff is, can I somehow make this sound that's like super stubborn kind of mutate and come back and so that I can exist in this kind of evolving world of sound, rather than something where it's like, okay, well, now I'm on the keyboard, now I'm over here doing this kind of sound. So I'm not like claiming that I've solved any of that, but that's I guess the sort of driving spirit for me in trying to think about extended techniques at the piano.
Yeah. Oh, Ted, we can't hear you, but you're muted. But I'm just checking the time, and maybe we should wrap it up and listen to Cory's last track. So for everyone listening, I'm going to put this in the chat. There's a link to Cory's record. Please pick it up. Please support Cory. Please support the label. We so appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Ted, for moderating.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's just been such a joy to talk to you all. Thank you, Cory, Kyoko, and Kari, for joining us. And we're going to listen to track 4, Kinetic Whirlwind Sculpture.
Can I just say real quick, thank you so much, Chris and Ted and Kyoko and Carrie, for doing this. And yeah, I mean, it's been, I've been so grateful, Kyoko and Carrie, to have gotten to work with you and spending so much time living in the sound world that your voices have created, and it's really meant a lot to me. And thank you for being here tonight, and thanks, Chris, for doing this. Thanks, Ted, for all the thoughtful questions. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Okay, here we go.